I never believed in horror stories until one happened to me. Back in 2017, I had just moved into a small rental house in a quiet suburb of Columbus, Ohio. It was a cozy two-bedroom place with an old-school charm, creaky floors, wooden cabinets, and one of those old-fashioned crawl spaces under the house. I lived alone, and honestly, I loved the peace and quiet. Until that November. About 2 weeks after moving in, I started hearing noises beneath the floor. Scratching, soft banging, and what sounded like someone dragging something heavy. I thought maybe it was raccoons or an opossum. I called pest control. They checked and found nothing. No droppings, no signs of intrusion. Just cold dirt and darkness. But the noises kept coming, only at night. One evening, around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to what sounded like whispering directly under my bed. I froze. It wasn't the TV, and I lived alone. I sat up slowly, holding my breath, and I swear to you, I heard someone say, "She's awake." I jumped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and went to the living room. I wanted to call 911, but I didn't even know what to say. There was no proof, no break-in, just noises. The next morning, I worked up the courage to open the crawl space hatch, which was in the hallway closet. It took everything in me to lift that old wooden panel. What I saw still haunts me. There was a mattress down there, a stained, disgusting mattress, some food wrappers, a small flashlight, and a notebook filled with shaky handwriting. Pages and pages of what looked like someone watching me. She washes dishes at 7 p.m. She watched a horror movie alone tonight. She sleeps in the left side of the bed. I ran out of the house, called the police, and they arrived within minutes. They confirmed it. Someone had been living under my house. For how long, no one could say. They never caught him. I moved out that same week and never went back. But sometimes, late at night, I still feel like someone's watching me. Like he found a new crawl space. A new person to observe. I've always been a night owl. As a freelance graphic designer, my work hours are weird. I'm usually up until 3 or 4 in the morning, headphones on, coffee in hand, designing logos or editing campaigns. That's why I noticed it. I moved into my Edmonton apartment building in early 2021. Quiet place, mostly older tenants. The landlord told me the unit above mine was unoccupied. It had been that way since late 2020 due to some water damage they were still repairing. So imagine how I felt the first time I heard footsteps above my ceiling at 2:17 a.m. At first, I thought I misheard, but then I heard them again, slow pacing, from one side of the apartment to the other. I muted my music, dead silence. Then, again, creak, creak, creak. I didn't report it right away, figured it might be plumbing or heating pipes. But it happened again the next night, and the next, always between 2 and 3 a.m., and always followed by a low dragging noise, like furniture being moved or something being dragged across the floor. I finally called the building manager. He was confused and promised to check it out. The next day, he told me the door was still locked with the original padlock. No one had been inside. No one could have been. There was dust on the floor, undisturbed. I didn't sleep that night. A few nights later, I decided to record the sound. I placed my phone on the ceiling-facing shelf and let it run. When I played it back, it was mostly silence. Until minute 43. A loud bang. The unmistakable sound of something crawling. And then, a whisper, right next to the mic. "Don't look up." I moved out within the week. Never looked back. I still don't sleep with music on anymore. And I never ever live beneath an empty apartment. I moved into my flat in Manchester after a painful breakup. It was a small, affordable one-bedroom in an old Victorian building that had been converted into units. Nothing fancy, but perfect for a fresh start. A few weeks in, I started noticing something strange. My walk-in closet always felt colder than the rest of the flat. I blamed poor insulation. But one night, as I was reorganizing some boxes, I noticed something odd. The back panel of the closet wall sounded hollow. Curious, I pushed on it. With a bit of pressure, the panel popped open like a hidden door. Behind it was a narrow passageway. My stomach dropped. I grabbed a flashlight, hesitated, then stepped in. The air was thick and stale. At the end of the narrow corridor was a small hidden room, dusty, untouched, and completely unmarked on the apartment floor plan I'd been given. But what scared me wasn't the room itself, it was what was inside. A child's mattress, sunken with age, a broken plastic toy truck, a stack of notebooks filled with scribbled drawings of a tall figure with no face. But the final page of the last notebook made me drop it. In messy, childlike handwriting, it read, "Emily, he's in your room now." That night, I heard soft footsteps moving from the closet to my bed. I never opened that hidden door again. I moved out 2 weeks later. I didn't care about losing my deposit. I just wanted to sleep through the night again. Every summer, my brother and I take a hiking trip deep into Montana's backcountry. No phones, no GPS, just maps, packs, and our dog, Riley. It's our tradition. In 2021, we tried a new route in the Lewis and Clark National Forest off the beaten path, marked only on some old forums. We were 2 days in when we started to notice things out of place. First, it was the silence. No birds, no rustling trees, just the sound of our boots crunching on the trail. Then the scratches, carved into trees along our path, long, jagged claw marks, too deep for any animal I know. Some looked fresh. That night, our camp was surrounded by heavy footfalls. We thought it was a bear, until we heard a low, rasping breath just outside the tent. Riley, our fearless dog, whined and refused to leave the tent the next morning. That was our first real warning. On the third day, we found a clearing. At the center was a large stone structure. Primitive, circular, and eerily clean, like someone or something was maintaining it. In the middle lay a single word written in stones: run. We didn't sleep that night. We packed up and hiked non-stop for 16 hours until we hit the nearest ranger station. The trail we followed? It's not on any official map. And that stone formation? The ranger simply said, "You're not the first to come out of there scared, but most don't come out at all." In 2019, I was on a solo road trip across the southwestern US, heading toward Arizona. As night fell near a small town in New Mexico, my GPS lost signal, and I decided to pull into a small, rundown motel just off the highway. The sign flickered. The office smelled like stale smoke. The clerk barely spoke, but I was exhausted. Room 6. That was mine. The room felt off. There was no clock, no phone, just a bed, a flickering lamp, and a large, dusty mirror nailed to the wall opposite the bed. Around 2:14 a.m., I heard the first knock. Sharp, deliberate, 3 times. I opened the door. No one. I assumed it was a prank. Went back to bed. It happened again at 3:07 a.m. Still no one. This went on all night. Each knock was louder, more aggressive, but there was never anyone there. When I looked out the window around 4 a.m., I saw something across the parking lot, a figure standing still in the dark, not moving. It looked like a man, except it was too tall. Its arms hung almost to its knees. I shut the blinds and waited for daylight. When I finally went to check out, the front office was locked. No sign of the clerk. I left the key in a dish outside the window and drove off. An hour later, I stopped at a gas station in the next town. I mentioned the motel. The cashier frowned. That place hasn't been open since 2003. Someone was murdered there. Room 6, I think. In the summer of 2021, I took a solo hiking trip to British Columbia's interior, dense forests, mountain trails, and no cell phone reception. I needed to clear my head, and camping off-grid sounded like the perfect remedy. About 3 days in, I was deep into a trail that barely anyone used. I had my tent pitched near a narrow stream and was preparing dinner when I heard crunching footsteps behind me. I turned. No one. Just trees and wind. That night, something woke me up. A low growling noise, like a man trying to whisper through clenched teeth. When I unzipped the tent, there was someone standing at the edge of the treeline. He was tall, very still, but his face, it was completely smooth. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just skin. I froze. Then he moved, not toward me, but sideways, gliding along the trees, never blinking, never turning. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it into the woods. That's when I saw them. 4 more figures, all faceless, all staring. I packed my things in the dark and hiked 5 hours straight to the nearest service road. I didn't stop until I saw headlights. A local hunter later told me that trails known for vanishings the kind police can't explain. To this day, I won't go near a forest alone. Back in 2018, I was driving cross-country to visit my sister in Portland. After about 10 hours on the road, I pulled into a quiet town in western Nebraska. The place felt stuck in the past, faded signs, empty streets, and a strange silence that hung in the air. It was already dark, so I found a small roadside motel, the Red Pines Inn, with flickering neon and a sleepy man at the front desk who barely looked up when I checked in. He gave me room 12. When I entered the room, I noticed a faint smell of something stale, almost metallic. The decor looked like it hadn't changed since the 80s. Faded wallpaper, a bulky old TV, and a bedspread with burn marks. But I was too exhausted to care. I locked the door, set the chain, and crashed on the bed without even changing clothes. At around 2:15 a.m., I woke up shivering. The heater had stopped working, and the room felt ice cold. But more than that, something felt off. The kind of off that makes your skin tighten. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Inside the room. I sat up, heart racing. I was sure I was alone. But the noise, slow, deliberate steps, was coming from the corner near the bathroom. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. There was no one there. But now the bathroom door was ajar. I had left it fully open. I walked over and pushed it. Empty. Just a flickering fluorescent light above the mirror. I turned around and noticed something that made my stomach drop. The front door chain was hanging. I had locked it before sleeping. I was sure of it. I rushed to the door. The bolt was still locked, but the chain was off. Someone had been in the room. Panicking, I tried to call the front desk. No signal. I opened the door and ran barefoot across the freezing parking lot to the office. The man at the desk looked startled. I told him someone had broken into my room. He blinked, then said slowly, "You said room 12? That room's been locked from the inside for weeks. We never rent it out." I showed him my key. He paled. "That's not one of ours," he whispered. We went back together. When we opened the door, the room was empty, except the chain was locked again from the inside. I never got an explanation. I left that town before sunrise and never looked back. I later searched online. That motel had several reports over the years. Strange noises, people being assigned rooms they never booked, and a woman who vanished from room 12 in 1997. Her name was Erica, same as mine. My name's Daniel, and this happened in the summer of 2022, up in rural Vermont, where my grandfather used to own a small, isolated cabin in the woods. It had been our family's getaway spot for decades, but after Grandpa passed, no one really went back. It just sat there untouched, overgrown, forgotten. That summer, after a rough breakup and too much burnout from work, I decided to take a solo trip and clear my head. I thought the quiet would help. I didn't realize how dangerous quiet could feel. The first day was peaceful. The place smelled of old pine wood and damp leaves. The electricity still worked, barely. I spent the afternoon chopping firewood, walking the perimeter, and feeling that strange nostalgia you only get from childhood places. That night, I lit a fire, poured myself some whiskey, and sat under the stars. There was something comforting in how dark it got out there. No light pollution, no noise. Just nature. But by the second night, something felt off. I was sitting on the small back porch, looking out at the woods when the silence changed. It wasn't normal nighttime quiet, it was absolute. No crickets. No wind. Just stillness. And then I heard it. Faint. Just a whisper. From deep in the trees. It was my name. Daniel. At first, I laughed nervously, thinking maybe it was the whiskey or my mind playing tricks. But then I heard it again, louder this time, and it was my voice. Like someone mimicking me, but wrong. Slower. Distorted. Daniel. I stood up, shining my flashlight into the trees. Nothing. Just black. I went inside, locked everything, and didn't sleep much. But the worst came the next morning. When I stepped outside, I noticed something carved into one of the trees near the back trail. My name, Daniel. Fresh, deep grooves. But underneath it, carved in the same fashion, was a date. August 14th, 1987. The day I was born. I called my brother. He didn't answer. I called my mom. She picked up and asked what was wrong. She said I sounded terrified. When I told her what I found, she went silent and then asked a question that froze my blood. Did you go into the woods behind the cabin? I said no, just walk the edges. She told me to pack my things and leave immediately. She later told me that Grandpa had always warned them not to go into the woods after dark. That back in the 60s, a man went missing there. They found carvings in the trees, with names of people who hadn't even been born yet, including mine. My parents never told me because they thought it was just some old folktale Grandpa made up to scare the kids. But now, I'm not so sure. I haven't been back since. The cabin is still there, untouched. But if you ever find yourself in the woods of Vermont, and you hear your own name whispered from the trees, don't answer. And don't look, because it remembers you. Last fall, I decided to go hiking alone in the remote mountains of the Pacific Northwest. I've always loved the wilderness, the fresh air, the towering trees, the sense of freedom. But what happened that night changed everything I believed about nature. I started my hike late afternoon, hoping to catch the sunset at the summit. The trail was quiet, lined with thick fog that rolled in fast. As the sun dipped, the fog swallowed the forest around me. Visibility dropped so low I could barely see 5 feet ahead. I knew the trail well, but the fog confused me. I kept moving forward, telling myself it was just a misty evening. Then I noticed something strange. Faint, glowing orbs flickering between the trees, floating silently, almost like lanterns. Curious, I followed them off the main trail. The orbs led me deeper into the woods, past where any hikers usually go. Time passed, but my phone's GPS was glitching, unable to find a signal. Then the unthinkable happened. I realized I was completely lost. Panic set in. I tried calling for help, but my voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the fog. That's when I heard whispering. Not human words, but an eerie, unintelligible murmuring that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Suddenly, the orbs dimmed and vanished. The forest fell into total silence, except for a faint rustling in the underbrush. I froze, heart pounding, when out of the fog stepped a figure, tall, cloaked in shadow, with eyes that glowed faintly orange. I couldn't move or scream. The figure raised a hand, pointing toward a faint light in the distance. Compelled by fear and instinct, I followed it. The light led me back to the main trail and eventually to my car. When I looked back, the figure was gone. But my phone had one new photo, a blurry silhouette standing among the trees, watching me leave. I never told anyone at the time, fearing I'd sound crazy. But if you ever find yourself lost in the foggy woods and see glowing eyes watching you, don't follow the lights. Just run. Last summer, my friends and I decided to explore an old abandoned lighthouse on the coast of Maine. It was said to be haunted, but we didn't believe in ghost stories. We just wanted some adrenaline and cool footage for our YouTube channel. The lighthouse was perched on jagged rocks by the ocean, surrounded by thick fog and crashing waves. As we approached, the air grew colder, and an eerie silence blanketed the area despite the crashing sea. Inside, the wooden stairs creaked under our feet. The walls were covered in peeling paint and strange scratch marks, like someone had clawed at them desperately. We joked about it, trying to stay brave. Around midnight, we reached the top of the lighthouse and looked out over the dark ocean. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the tower, sharp, human, but distorted, like a voice trapped in agony. It wasn't one of us. We froze, heart pounding, but no one else was there. The temperature dropped dramatically. Our breath fogged up in front of us. Then, shadows danced on the walls, flickering like candle flames, though we saw no candles. One by one, our flashlights flickered and died. The screaming came again, louder and closer, as if circling us. Panicked, we rushed down the stairs, but the path seemed to shift. The lighthouse walls warped, corridors stretched unnaturally. It felt like the place was alive, trying to trap us. Finally, we burst out into the cold night air, gasping for breath. We didn't stop running until we reached our cars. When we looked back, the lighthouse windows glowed faint red, like eyes watching us flee. Since then, none of us have been able to forget that night. The lighthouse's scream still echoes in our nightmares. Some say it's the trapped spirit of a lighthouse keeper who vanished mysteriously decades ago, doomed to warn sailors, but cursed to never find peace. A few years ago, I was living alone in a small suburban town in Oregon. One cold autumn night, I was sitting on my porch late, just scrolling through my phone, when I noticed something strange out of the corner of my eye. At first, I thought it was a stray cat or raccoon, but then I realized it wasn't moving like an animal at all. There, standing just beyond the yard's edge near the trees, was a tall, dark figure. Completely black, no features, like a silhouette made of shadows. I froze. The air suddenly felt heavier, and a chill ran down my spine. I blinked, but it was still there, just standing motionless. Then slowly, it began to drift sideways along the tree line. It didn't walk. It glided silently, like it was floating. I tried to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. My phone's flashlight was in my hand, so I flicked it on and pointed it at the figure, hoping to get a better look. The moment the light hit it, the shadow vanished, like it was never there. Since that night, strange things have happened. Objects moved, footsteps in empty rooms, and that overwhelming feeling that I'm being watched. I never saw the figure again, but sometimes, when it gets quiet outside, I swear I can still feel it lurking just beyond my backyard. A couple of years ago, I was driving through rural Nevada late at night after a long day of work. My car started making weird noises, and I knew I needed to stop and rest before continuing. I found a small, rundown motel off the highway, one of those places that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. But it was late, and I was exhausted, so I checked in for the night. The motel clerk was oddly quiet, barely making eye contact, but I brushed it off, thinking maybe it was just the late hour. I got to my room, number 13, ironically, and as soon as I stepped inside, something felt off. The air was stale and cold, and the fluorescent light flickered intermittently. That night, I tried to sleep, but strange noises kept me awake. Low murmurs, footsteps pacing outside the door, and the occasional banging on the walls. At one point, I swear I heard someone whispering my name. I got up, checked the hallway empty. No other guests seemed to be around. The next morning, I went down to check out, but when I tried to open my door, it wouldn't budge. It was like the room itself was trapping me inside. I pounded on the door, called the front desk, but no one answered. My phone had no signal. I started to panic. After what felt like hours, the door finally swung open by itself. I bolted out and left the motel as fast as I could. Later, when I told someone about the place, they said the motel had been shut down years ago after multiple unexplained disappearances. Some locals say room 13 is cursed, that anyone who stays overnight never really leaves. I never went back, but sometimes late at night, I get texts from an unknown number with nothing but static, and I swear it's coming from that motel. This happened about 3 years ago to a close friend of mine, Lisa, who lives in a quiet suburb outside of Seattle. One evening, she was walking home after working late at her office downtown. It was already dark, and the streets were mostly empty except for a few passing cars. As she walked, she felt like someone was watching her, but whenever she glanced back, there was no one there. The streetlights flickered on and off intermittently, casting long shadows across the pavement. She quickened her pace, but still had this unnerving sensation that something was following her. Then, in her peripheral vision, she caught sight of a tall, dark figure standing by a tree about 50 feet behind her. When she stopped to look directly, it vanished like a puff of smoke. Lisa decided not to take any chances and called her husband to come pick her up, explaining she felt uneasy. As she waited, she noticed the shadow figure again, this time closer. It didn't have any distinct features, just an inky black silhouette with no face or shape, almost like a shadow come to life. When her husband finally arrived, she jumped in the car and locked the doors. The figure was standing right on the sidewalk, motionless, watching them drive away. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep and kept feeling like the presence had followed her home. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Lights flickering, cold spots in her bedroom, and the sound of footsteps when no one else was home. She even caught a glimpse of the shadow figure in the corner of her eye once, disappearing whenever she turned toward it. Lisa later learned that the area near the tree was the site of several mysterious disappearances decades ago, with reports of a dark figure seen lurking around. To this day, she won't walk alone after dark, always fearing that shadow might still be following her.